Welcome everyone to this series of programming in Python. So far we have covered the basic contents in Python, whether it's syntaxes or whether it's a basic type of data. And from this session onwards, we are going to look into in-depth of individual data types. So starting with string, we shall be looking into the depth of it, and progressively in the future classes we'll be moving on to more topics such as for loops, while loop, decision making, classes, objects, etc. But before we could even deal with those higher topics, we should know how to handle data. A data which could be in a form of integer or float or string or list or anything, right? So this session covers string type of data in a very depth. Before we get started, let's see what are we going to learn in this particular session. First, we are going to know again what is string. Okay, this is going to be our agenda for this series or these sessions in this series. Thereafter, we are going to know how to create a string. Now, when you create a string, it could be an empty string or filled, right? Once you've created a string, once you have the string stored in your variable, then we are going to see how to access the string from the memory, because all this data, whether it's any type, you're storing eventually in a memory, right? So how do you access it back? Now, whether when you want to access it, do you want to access it full, or do you want to access it in parts or partially, right? So this is something that we're going to look next. Once we have created the data, string data, once we have uh, accessed the data, then we are going to see how to manipulate, or I would say uh, process the data. Okay, and then we are going to learn some common functions slash methods of string. So this happens to be our agenda which we are going to cover in today's session. Let's get started. Let's see what a string is. So like I said earlier, a mathematical kind of data like numbers or integers or floats which can directly be stored in a variable. A string is a type of data which is a combination of alphabets. It could be a combination of your numbers. It could be a combination of alphabets in the numbers, and as well as uh, special characters. For example, I can say here uh, statement equal to cricket World Cup is going to be hosted in India, and I can write here hash 2023. If you see here, this data happens to contain a capital character, a small characters, alphabets, the space, numbers, hashtag, capital, and everything. So basically, a string is a type of data. It's a sequence of characters. These characters could be small case, uppercase, numbers, or special characters. When I say special characters, I could mean this character, this, any of such characters. And even this space, it's the inclusive of space also. And even the uh, characters, all the alphabet characters, and even the numbers are included, right? So you can make up your string data using any of such characters in any amount of quantity. But one thing is, string data is always encompassed or enclosed within quotes. So if I'm writing statement here, you would observe that I'm starting the string data with a quote and I'm ending with a quote. What this tells Python is anything that is lying between these quotes makes up as a string data. But one thing to note here is it is not necessary that you need to have the double quote itself. You can also have single quote as well, something like this, or I could also have triple quote like this, or I could also have triple double quotes. All these are valid. So if you want to create a string type of data, if you want to pass around the data which happens to be string, it's your choice whether you want to go for double quote, single quote, triple single quote, or triple double quotes. But one thing you can ask is when Python can recognize a string with just single quote, why do we need so many different type of quote? And the answer is imagine I'm creating a data which is something like this. Data equals to children's. If you see this type of data, you see a quote itself is a part of data. This quote itself is making up and is part of data. It's a syntax of English. But here Python shall get confused because Python expects that your if a string data is starting with a quote, single quote, it should end with a single quote. However, upon encountering a single quote somewhere in the middle of the data, uh, it will not be able to recognize whether it's the end of data or what. And in this case, it is going to throw up an error. If I try to print here data, you will see that it is going to throw up an error. It says it's the invalid decimal literal. So what do we do? If we want single quote itself to be a part of data, in that case, we are going to move on to the next type of string literal that we have. These markers, which mark the data as one of its kind. It's the starting and the ending marks like double quotes here. We are going to move on to the next available option with us, and single quote we are going to let it be within the data, so that when I run this, you're going to see that this has been considered as a valid string. It has been printed, and you can see that within the data the code is included, right? So this is how we are going to, this is what a string is. A string is a sequence of characters, a character which can be the alphabets or numbers, special characters, or the space or anything. Yep. And moving on to next, how to create the string. Okay, I have already told you how to create a string. Anything that you put within the quotes ends up becoming a string. But what if I want to create an empty string? Okay, how to create an empty string? In that case, I can say you just have to put quotes. That's all. Whether it's double quote or single quote, you just have to put the quote like that, and that will create a variable which goes by the name data here in this example which I'm doing, and an empty string has been created. So this creates an empty string. However, why do you need an empty string? Perhaps you're creating a variable, you have just stored an empty string in it. Maybe later you might want to update it, later you might want to store it, something in it. So you just have initialized as nothing, okay? If you want to create a filled data, maybe you want to create a data which is of type, which is holding a data of type string, but something in it. I can just push some content in it, maybe uh, hash 2023. Yep. Now that's a filled string. Okay. Moving on to how to access the string, whether it's in full or in part. Okay, so we are moving on to our third agenda. How to access the string. So if I'm creating some data, something like uh, quote, maybe I can write some quote, integrity is the best virtue. Okay, something I've written. Now I want to access it. If I try to print quote, the whole content is rendered in front of me. The whole content is fetched from the storage and given to me. But why did it do so? It's because I am mentioning the whole data, right? I am mentioning the whole name of variable, and that indicates print whatever is stored in the storage, in this storage which goes by the name quote. So whatever is stored there, it shall be completely accessed and given to me. But in case I want to partially access there, then before I teach you how to partially access, let me tell you that since string is a sequence of character, please note that this is how our string data looks like, isn't it? Please note that underneath each element, underneath each alphabet or character, there is a positions. When I say position, so imagine that if you're trying to read your data in this natural order, something in this direction, you're trying to move from left to right and you're trying to read, then please note that each character has a position. I is located at position 0, N is located at position 1, E is located at position 2, 3, so on and so forth up to the end. Okay, so if I want to read my data in partially, so this what I just wrote here is an example or an instance of reading data in full. But if I want to read some data in partially, then I am going to put the square brackets. Please note it's the square bracket very next to the variable name. And I'm going to write the corresponding position. Say if I want to access the data that is stored at 0, I'm going to access that 0th position. So if I run this, you shall see that only I is given to me for this particular print command. So the syntax is you write the storage, you point to a storage which you're trying to access, and the square bracket put next to it conveys to the Python that you're trying to access that storage partially, only with respect to a single position. In other words, index. Index is a technical term in Python which refers to the position. If I write 2 here, you shall see that T, right? So 0, 1, 2. Please note that when you're trying to read the data from left to right, it is starting from 0, not 1. 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay. So this being said, having said this, another thing to note here is in case you're trying to come, reading the data from right to left, that is in the reverse direction, something like this. If you're trying to read the data in this direction, in such a case, the positions are termed negative. So the starting position shall be -1, thereafter -2, and so on and so forth up to the end position. Please note, while you were reading from left to right, that's the natural order of reading, left to right, in that case, positions were positives. The position are positive and they start with 0. However, when you come from the reverse direction, they start with negative. The negative sign indicates that direction is reversed. and it starts with -1, goes up to -2, -3, up to the end. Okay, so here instead of 2, if I give -2, you will realize that I've started reading the negative sign. Since negative sign indicates that I'm reading the string from the reverse direction, that means in this particular direction, minus second position shall be accessed for you. So this happens to be the -1, -2. So u shall be given to you. Let me run it and show. Here, it's u which has been given to you. So I hope you have understood that if I am creating a string data here and I'm storing that into the variable, if I have to access that data back, if I have to access the storage and read what is stored in it, in that case, I will write the variable name. That means access what is stored here and it will be printed. But if I want to access it in partially, then I'll write the variable name and I'll put square bracket and put position uh, in between the square brackets. That will access the string with respect to only positions. Okay. Now, to correlate with our day-to-day examples, how this access of string means, try to correlate it with pizza. Getting your hands on complete pizza is same as you're accessing the whole variable's content fully. Accessing the string with respect to just one position or one index is as good as getting your hands on a single slice of pizza. But that's not the only way to access the pizza, right? You might want to access or get your hands on first 3 slices, or the alternate slices, or the last 2 slices from the reverse direction, right? In the same way, when you have the data stored in a variable, it is not necessary that you're going to access either the full or with respect to only one position. You might want to access your data in the range of first 5 characters, or last 10 characters, or among the first 20 characters. You might want to access every alternate characters, right? So such kind of combinations of uh, accessing you might be wanting to do. You might be wanting to slice your data into such different combinations. We can do that in string as well. The syntax for that goes, so here I am trying to access the data partially, however, with respect to positions, right? The same thing I can do. Let me take this content here, and now let me write it that I want to access not with respect to position but with respect to range. Okay, let's see how do we do that. Please remember that earlier the square bracket which I was specifying, that would of course that would indicate that I'm trying to access the data partially, and within this I shall specify the index number or position number. However, now in this particular case we are going to write start position, end position, and stride. Okay, we shall shortly see what it means. Let me take this particular one and let me take this. So here obviously if I'm writing like this, the whole storage will be accessed for me. But if I'm writing this syntax, that means I'm in this particular variable, whatever is stored, I'm trying to access that partially. However, I will start accessing that or start reading that from this starting position. I can give here as 0. I am starting to read it at 0. I am going to go up to maybe 10th position and stride be 1. Okay, so if I do this, you shall get integrity. If I change end as 5, I'm going to get integ. So what's happening here is, let's say I said starting at 0, so that means I have started accessing my data at 0th position here. Okay, and I'm going to go up to 5th position. So I'm starting here, I'm going to go up to 0th position, 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? Up to this position, I'm going to go and access completely. Please note, just because I've given end as 5, that doesn't mean that end has to be included. it is going to be excluded because effectively it is up to. I am going to go up to 5. That means this happens to be a fifth position, but fifth will not be considered. I am going to stop at 4. 0 to 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 is what I'm going to consider. Fifth is up to position. And what does 1 mean here? 1 means jump. So basically, in this particular range, starting at 0, going up to 5, I'm going to consider each element. Now that is what is called a stride or jumps. Okay, so INTEG, this is what we are going to get. In case I make it, in case I make stride as 2, you shall see that ITG. Why did you get ITG? It's because when I say stride being 2, in that case, of course, I'm starting at 0th position. I'm going up to 5th position. But since I said that stride is 2 here, that means I will start here and then I'm going to go to the second position, and from here the further second position. So every alternate is what I'm going to consider. So ITG, that's what we get here, right? So this is how we actually access the string in partial manner, but with respect to range. I hope that's clear to everyone, right? Perfect. Now that concludes our third agenda, that is how to access string in full and how to access string in parts. Having covered that, now let's see how to manipulate or process the string data. Okay, so or in other words, I would say uh, operations on the string data. Now this is more easier to uh, convey. Okay, when I say operations on string data, there are only two operations that you can do. Okay, one is, say if I'm writing here name equals to Aliza and I am trying to print here name plus 5. I'm pretty sure many of you would guess that it's going to print Aliza 5, but no, it's going to be an error. If I try to run here, you will see that it says error and it says that it can concatenate only string to string but not integers. What that means is, just like if I were to do any mathematical or arithmetic operations like plus, 5 plus 5 is 10, 10 plus 5 is 15, but such arithmetic operation happens on mathematical kind of data only, like integer or float. If you have to do plus with string and integer, Aliza plus 5 doesn't make sense. However, if you have to concatenate, that means you have to just join these strings end to end. In that case, please note that both the data type has to be same. If this is string, then what I'm adding up has to be string. So in this case, the answer shall be Aliza 5. Got it? So this is what it is. I hope that's clear to everyone. The next thing is, if I here it was addition. However, if I do division here, it doesn't make sense. Okay, nor would the exponential would make, nor would the subtraction would make. However, if I do multiplication, uh, you might be wondering what might happen, but it is going to replicate the name. That means whatever string is present on the here, it is going to be replicated. Uh, sorry, not here. It has to be numeric here. Yeah, if it's numeric here, that means that many number of times this particular string is going to be replicated. Something like this: Aliza, 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 Aliza. Yep. I hope that's clear with everyone. Yep. So these things you can do to ease out your efforts on repeating the data. The same things could have also been stored in some uh, variable, something like this, and this variable could have also been accessed and being printed at the later stage, something like this. It all is same. Now we have covered largely uh, most of our agenda so far. Now comes the most important part, that is common functions or methods of string. Now what does that mean? Well, common function and methods help you to manipulate the string or to play around with the data, or if you want to uh, make changes to your data or want to process your data, there are some ready-made methods or functionality to do so. Now, what do you mean by process the data or manipulate with the data? It's something like, if I have given you the data in all small case, I can write India is a has the largest democracy, and I have given the whole string in lowercase. But you want to convert complete string into uppercase. How do you do that? Well, that's like processing the whole data, isn't it? It's like processing the whole string. To do so, we have some methods. How to use those methods? Let's see. Let me take the example somewhere from here itself. Yep, right. So I have a data here which I'm storing it in a variable which is called quote. Now let's see how I can modify this data. Okay, let me create another variable called as modified data. Now, so there are certain methods or certain functions which are very specifically associated with string itself. So how do you use it? You write quote dot say upper. Yep. So it's something like on this storage. So whatever is being stored in this quote, over this upper is being applied. In a layman's term, you can understand that. And this is collectively is going to give you back modified data which you are ending up storing in modified data. Let's see what does it give us. Let me print this modified data here. You see, the whole string is converted uh, into a uppercase, right? So upper, this particular method converts a string into uppercase. In a similar manner, I have many other methods. If I say lower, let me change here some content here, integrity. Yep. So here it's a mix of uppercase and lowercase. But let's see what. Yep, I have corrected this. Yeah. What does this particular function does? So this converts the complete string into the lowercase. You see here, it has converted everything into lowercase. On a similar way, there is something called as replace. Replace. Now, what does replace do? If I say instead of integrity, I write here integrity, comma, honesty. So what's happening here is I am telling Python that over this code, whatever is being stored in the code, replace, and I am to this particular functionality or this function, I am passing two contents here within parentheses. First is integrity. Why did I put integrity? It's because this integrity or this word, I want to replace it with another word that's called as honesty. So what to be replaced? Second is with what to be replaced. If I run this, we shall see that integrity has been replaced with honesty, and this is your new answer, right? Perfect. There are almost 45 to 50 such methods which can help you to manipulate the string data, but we are going to discuss only the common few, okay, which is going to help you get started with the string. And I will provide the notes or the documentation on the all possible string methods, but here goes few more which are commonly used. So I'm writing like this, and if I say split, I know that we haven't learned list in detail, but let's say if I'm splitting this uh, content, if I'm splitting this on a basis of space, so what is this? This is like a separator. Okay, this is a function which is going to split your string into parts, but on what basis? I say space. Okay, so if I run this, you shall see that a list is provided to you, and in the list, each element is a cutout element. And how did the elements have been created? Based on a separator. So at the separator, uh, it's like uh, a single string has been cut out by a scissors. At every occurrence or at every place where the space was occurring, it has been cut out, and all the individual elements have been stored in a list, right? So this is how you get. Now if I try to print only the zero element here, you shall get only the first word of that element, integrity, right? If I write -1 here, that means in the reverse order, the very first element, I get virtue, right? So this is how it is. Perfect. Let's go forward. There is something called as index. Let's try to understand what index does. Okay, if I'm writing here I, what's happening is, what I mean to ask is, this particular function is going to assess the code and tell you what is that position where it finds the occurrence of I for the first time. Here it says 10th, right? 10th. So let's verify it. Is it really 10th? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9th, 10th. Yes, it's indeed, it is the 10th position. Instead of just character, you can as well give some word like best. I can give best here. It will search the whole string and will tell you at what position is this word existing. Look at this. It says that it is existing at 17th position, right? Now, so index functionality tells you at what position it is existing. Let's look at one more, which is called as count. Okay, count tells you, so if I'm writing here best couple of times, say 3 times, and I search for how many times, count means it is going to count the number of occurrences of this content which you pass within the parenthesis. It says 3. That means analyzing the whole string, it has found that 3 times the best exists, right? So you get 3 here. So if we quickly revisit what we just saw, there are certain functionalities or method uh, which you can apply over a particular string, and that is going to process your string or manipulate your string content. So when I say upper, it's going to create it in uppercase. You have the function to convert to lowercase. You can replace some a substring, a part of a string, by some another content. You can split it towards a list based on some specific separator. Using index, you can get at what position is it starting, the substring that you have passed, and count tells you how many occurrences it has found. Now, not just these, you have many. You have dot title, you have dot capitalize, you have dot uh, strip, you have dot else strip. There are a lot many, almost 45, like I said, 45 to 50 methods are there to manipulate your string. However, these happens to be quite common. Apart from this, you also have certain methods like, uh, let me write here another one. I can write statement equals to, maybe let me change the data now. Uh, India has the largest democracy. Okay, this is another statement. Now I want to check whether is it uppercase. In that case, I'm going to, there is a method called as is upper. Okay, now see, this is like a this particular function assesses this particular data, and the result is always going to be either true or false. So since I am going to check here whether it's true or false, so here let's see what does it give here. Give it to us. It says false. Obviously it's false. But if I change here, India is largest democracy. You shall see that it suddenly says true, right? Even if I make one letter as false, it is going to give me false because is upper checks for it to be completely uppercase. Okay, it has to be starting to end, everything has to be uppercase for it to be true. Something like this, we have another thing called as is digit. Now this, uh, why do we have like is digits? For example, if I give you 810553569 uh, 0 something like this, some random numbers, if I give, I'm pretty sure that all of you would have at some point of the time would have been tried to give your mobile number and it would have said that invalid characters entered, right? So how does the software know that you are not providing numbers and you're providing something else? Because every program has a functionality like this to check whether the incoming content is it a digit, is it a mathematical digit. So statement dot is digit checks the whole content and tells if there is anything other than the numbers present. So here it's going to say true, it is a digit. But if I say, even if I put one extra space here, it's going to tell me false. Even I put some extras, the alphabets like A, it's going to say false. I put a special character here, it's going to say false. It has to be completely A to Z numbers, right? This is how it is. So just like we have is upper, there is something called is digit, there is something called is lower, is numeric. So you have a lot of such uh, methods and functions which are readily available uh, for you at your disposal to modify the content, assess the content, or play around with the string data and manipulate it, right? So that concludes our string in depth. So string is nothing but it's a type of data. It's a data type in which your data can exist, which you can store in a variable. Uh, any string data has to be compulsorily defined within quotes. The quote can be a single quote or double quote as per you. And there are ways to access the string. Just to summarize, you can access it fully, you can access with respect to just the positions, and you can also access with respect to the range, the start position, the end, and the stride. Yep, stride here. And then you have certain methods like upper, lower, replace, split, index, all these ready-made methods you have to manipulate the data or process the string data. Right. I would be providing the notes for your better understanding, and you can look at it and attempt the assignments for hands-on and deep uh, absorption of the concept of string. Thank you, everyone.